I believe I was one of the first people in the world to sign streaming licenses that were on demand, like Spotify, in 17 countries in 2007. And yeah, I mean, we were probably too early. I mean, usually as an entrepreneur, my biggest thing has been I've been sometimes very, very early. But at the same time, that's what got my juices going.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, creators, and disruptors who are changing the way that business happens in cities like Miami, Florida. And today, we have a very special show. I'm Tyler Kelly. I'm here with my co-host, Leanne Buchanan.
Hey, everybody.
And today we have with us Demian Bellumio. Demian, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Demian, I am really excited to have you, and I'm so glad we were able to work it out. This conversation is going to be much like many of the conversations we've had over the years, probably just minus a drink or two.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what you do. But first, I think it's always helpful to get to know a little bit about who you are as a person behind the innovation. So for folks that are just joining us, Demian is the VP of Augmented Intelligence at NEORIS. And talk a little bit for a second about what NEORIS is and what it does, and then we'll get into who you are.
Yeah, so NEORIS is actually a global company headquartered in Miami. We are about 4,000 people all over the world. It was born 20 years ago as a spin-off of Cemex Group, which is Cemex is a global building material conglomerate. And yeah, it's a global consulting firm. And they wanted a crazy guy like me to come in and do what I do. So I'm sort of, aside from running the augmented intelligence practice, which specializes in AI technologies, I'm also sort of taking a role of an intrapreneur and creating new businesses inside NEORIS.
So we're going to talk in a moment about kind of the difference between out in the outside world when you were creating businesses and leading and scaling and growing to what it's like to be an intrapreneur. But I'm always curious. You are a serial entrepreneur. Like every single time I talk to you, you're talking about this is the thing I'm working on right now, or this is the other thing I'm working on. And so why don't you share with us what piques your interest in terms of a new idea or identifying a potential pain point that you can develop a technology-based solution to solve?
Yeah, so I mean, I usually focus on things that move me. There's not one thing or another thing. I definitely have been for the last at least 10, 15 years really focused on two areas of technology. One is AI or machine learning. And the other one is semantic computing, which is sort of looking at data in a way that the human being understands data, not like in the old way of rows and and columns, but more in a way that is it's almost like a network of information, which is how Google and Facebook look at data. So those two things have been really at the forefront. And then the key is how do you apply that to a number of things, and yeah, so it's been an interesting journey from music to not since I've been more in the consulting world the last 2 or 3 years. The medical field, the financial field, the retail field is incredible, which also demonstrates that really technology is agnostic. You could apply it to anything you really put your mind to it, but obviously each vertical has its own unique perspective.
Yeah, technology is often confused with innovation, and innovation is actually the process. And technology is just the tool. It is the thing that we use to allow innovation to be applied to different spaces. But you've had a journey. So walk us through some of the companies that you've started and what you were focusing on. What problems were you trying to solve?
Wow, we only have 20 minutes.
We don't have that long, but just maybe two or three examples.
Maybe I don't have the most successful journey, but I definitely enjoy my journey. And successful because I've always been not, financial obviously is an incentive, but it's always been curiosity and doing things. So I actually started my first company when I was graduating high school with a buddy of mine and his dad. We grew it to be one of the largest marble distributors in South Florida. so selling flooring. But it got me to build a network of 10 or 15 retail outlets and distribution centers and all that. So that was when I was in college. Then I decided to start my own bank. So I was an intern at Barclays Capital, and I convinced my boss to open our own financial advisory boutique. And we did that, which I still own a piece of, Broadspan Capital. So that was the late 90s. And we were advising tech companies in Miami in the late 90s. So that really started my journey, my passion with the computers, which started earlier because I used to build my own computers. And since then, I at that point, the most fascinating project in Miami was Terramark. And, you know, I had the luck to join Terramark at, you know, right at the point that was about to, well, at that point we didn't even know it, but a couple of years before we really made the breakthrough and became a successful company. So I was there from 2001 to 2006, and I was leading a lot of financial, and that was a great experience because I got to help take the company public and you know, raise a lot of money and things that Miami wasn't known for back then. And then I went really into my own entrepreneur journey for about 10 years, a number of companies in the music space. So intersection of music and technology. And that took me into algorithms, and that's pretty much how I got into AI. And since then, I've been really, really passionate about that area.
I'm, you know, algorithms, music, that combination. You know, I've always heard that although music is, you know, like the most creative of the arts, right? It's also very scientific.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you go from music to algorithms and how those interplay.
Yeah, so music, I went to it because when I made some money at Terramark, what do you do in Miami? You know, 20-something, you get a sports car and I put a music studio. So I had a music studio, and with my brother and a friend, and we had people come and record. And that's when like the reggaeton, you know, which is the Spanish genre that has blown up, was starting out. And I was asking the guys, how do you market yourself? And those were the MySpace days. So I'm like, MySpace wasn't really big in Latin America, and I saw really this music as super fascinating. And I said, why don't I open the MySpace of Latin America? So I did that. So it started more as a Latin music community. But then, you know, I came, at that point I was already at Terramark, had raised hundreds of millions of dollars, so my ambitions were always much bigger. So I said, this is like indie music, it's okay, let's go for the big boys. So I actually I believe I was one of the first people in the world to sign streaming licenses that were on demand, like Spotify, in 17 countries in 2007. So I think even before Spotify was created, I negotiated with other record labels, and out of Miami, I had a 40-person office in South Beach on top of Warner Music. I had offices in Argentina. I had office in LA, and we were creating this new music service that actually was doing things that even today the music service don't do. We were doing like co-listening of music. Like you could listen to the same song in the mobile from miles away, and being the same experience. We were doing a lot of things really that we believed were an interesting way of experiencing music in a cultural setting and experiential setting. So yeah, that's really what brought me into it. And as part of it, the problem with music is you have such huge catalog. Mm-hmm. So that's when you need to look at algorithms. How do I give someone the best song in that moment in time? And it's actually a very complicated task. That's
interesting, because you always think about, nowadays, like with Spotify, it's like they pretty much nailed me. Like they know exactly what I want to hear. And you were like, at the keyboard, your teams were at the keyboard trying to figure out these rules. Yeah. Like where do you even start? Like what's the process? What's that look like?
Well, so you actually need to, you combine a number of different techniques. You combine, techniques that understand a taste profile of a person by using an algorithm called collaborative filtering. It's like people that bought this, so people that listen to this love this. But in music, we also used to do a lot of acoustic analysis, right? So you analyze the acoustics of the songs, the beats, the tempo, the signal, the chromas, to see the different sounds. We also analyzed the lyrics. We actually did semantic analysis of lyrics and topic analysis. So things that were way beyond its time. We burned through a lot of money in the process. But I mean, that's what excited me, right? And yeah, I mean, we were probably too early. I mean, usually as an entrepreneur, my biggest thing has been I've been sometimes very, very early. But at the same time, that's what got my juices going.
So I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a pretty serial entrepreneur outside, starting your own thing, raising capital, and now being an intrapreneur, which is a similar but different role. So kind of what are the differences between working within an organization and then kind of scaling up something from scratch?
Yeah, so before NEORIS, I was at Accenture, and I hated that experience. Accenture's a great company, but it just really wasn't really what being an entrepreneur, really got me excited, right? Because it's very structured. What interesting about NEORIS is when I talked to them, they said, we are not Accenture. We are a large company, 4,000 or 5,000 people. We're part of an even larger company, Cemex, that's 45,000 people, but we're sort of super lean. And we want to do things that are crazy and like nobody has done. And we want to take this to the next level. So I got in, I brought actually my entire team, many of them have been with me for 10, 15 years, that I had taken to Accenture. I brought them here. And we started doing sort of what the company traditionally does, which is just, consulting and helping companies. But they also give me the liberty to start building things. So we started building things and, and one thing led to the other. And now I have like 4 or 5 things that are potentially, candidates to become companies on their own. The one that is most exciting right now is called Health Check, which is 3 months ago, the CEO and a number of leaders said, we need a solution for our clients to deal with this pandemic. What can we do? And I said, well, let me see. And on a Friday, told me that. On Sunday, they had a prototype. 2 weeks later, we launched globally with a bunch of clients in a very, very obviously sensitive area, right? Like, what is the health status of my employees? How do I deal with it? I mean, these are companies that have 20,000 employees, right? And they have medical teams and they have all this. So you have to build a solution that it has to be secure. It has to be, encrypted. It has to deal with privacy across many regions and legislations. And you have to basically deliver the data in a timely way because people could get sick and could die. So it was different than anything I've done before. And today we have about 150,000 people that we manage through the app, and it continues to grow.
So one of the things that stands out to me with a lot of the different projects you've worked on and companies you've started is there's an interesting intersection point between kind of algorithms and augmented intelligence, but then also the human element, right?
Yeah.
It's not that you're just building technology for the sake of technology. It's technology that interfaces very intimately with people, whether it's their music habits, whether it's their health. So how do you begin to navigate, maybe from a values and ethics standpoint, where the technology begins, where it ends, and how do you make sure that you're not kind of infringing too much on privacy and the personal experience?
Yeah, so obviously having built consumer companies before gives me a little sensitivity. So like right now, if you look at the solutions for this particular pandemic and ours looks like a consumer app. The other ones look like a questionnaire that just wants to suck data out of a person, right? And people right now are very stressed, right? This is a very stressful situation. So if you look at our app, it's actually very interesting. We build maps. We tell you how's COVID around you. We tell you how your colleagues are doing. I don't think any company tells you, how are your colleagues doing? How many are sick around you? We don't obviously say who the person is, but we show like little dots and we do things so you could get information. We even built an algorithm that scores you on your vulnerability, how vulnerable you are to get sick and disease, but all the data is completely anonymous and only you see it. But the idea is most people don't even know what could get them, sick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they read and there's a lot of misinformation about it. So we really build this app as, number one, obviously a tool for a company to be able to make the right decisions to protect people, but also for the employee to be able to become educated and aware of what's going on and obviously feel that they're part of what we call the corporate family, right? Because right now you're sort of disconnected from the company, you're disconnected from your colleagues. And yeah, so in that sense, my background of looking at something as a consumer, looking at something, and then obviously there's very interesting technology things that we use in the back end. But at the end of the day, the app needs to be used by someone, and it has to be engaging.
One of the things that brings up for me, and there's a broader conversation, Angela Benton, she has Streamalytics.
Yep.
We had the opportunity to travel to Israel with her. And there's this broader conversation around algorithmic bias and how we can think about the use of algorithms and augmented intelligence in a way that doesn't perpetuate some of the deep-rooted systemic biases that exist in society. As someone that's deeply embedded in that space and as a thought leader in that space, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think about that? Are those issues that are concerning to you? And how are you thinking about designing for not having those outputs that perpetuate bias?
I mean, algorithms are pretty simple. They get trained based on what you feed it, right? So if you feed information that's incomplete, they're going to have an incomplete picture, right? They don't make decisions on their own. So I think in anything that you do that is algorithmic, you really need to make sure that you're giving the algorithm, the full picture, right? The full picture, so it makes the right decisions. And obviously, there's bias. Obviously, there could be a bias in an algorithm that gives you a song recommendation, but whatever. What is the impact of that, right? But I mean, there's biases that obviously are very sensitive, right? When it profiles people, when it diagnoses people, right? Things that could lead to people actually dying, or could kill people, right? If you're talking about algorithms that are today used in military, situations. Even here with COVID, an algorithm that potentially gives the wrong information to someone could lead someone potentially either to go and get other people sick, or to not identify that person, and that person can continue getting people sick. So there's a lot of responsibility around algorithms, and we're just scratching the surface because we're learning. I mean, it's something that, although the math of all this has been around for 5, 6, 7, 10 decades, whatever, the application of it has only been at mass scale has been around for a decade.
I'm always like, when I get a chance to talk with somebody that's so such an expert in their field in this space, I always want to ask, what does the future look like in like this augmented intelligence space? Like what does 5 years out, 10 years, what can we expect?
Yeah, I mean, the more that I am in this industry, the more I know the least of what's going on out there, right? I mean, because I'm just fascinating every day about what it is. I mean, what I think what's going to be in the future is that things are going to become easier and easier to build, right? So algorithms will basically develop themselves. They will be sort of more automated. With that said, we're very far away from the singularity or any of these things that people talk about, but definitely they're becoming, more powerful in the sense that they could do more things on their own. They require less human interaction to learn. AlphaGo or any of these algorithms that are beating, humans in things like, the game of Go, or obviously chess they did a couple of decades ago. Right now they're able to do that just by teaching itself. But they're still very basic, right? They're still not doing crazy stuff. An area that fascinates me and I don't understand is quantum computing. Mm-hmm. I have a friend of mine, Jack Heathery, that just wrote he's the head of quantum computing for Google. And he wrote a book on it, and I went to see a speech, and it's just fascinating. I mean, that is like crazy. That's crazy. Algorithms of this thing are stupid compared to what you could do in a quantum field. Pretty much, as soon as we have a full quantum algorithm, the world stops working because every encryption that we have just won't work.
Yeah.
Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Lightning round.
Oof, are you ready?
Yeah.
So, I like this question.
Rapid fire questions.
Oh, so you guys have cards,
and we don't know what they're going to say until we pick them up. So, it's really serendipitous. So, Demian, how are you making a difference in this world?
By being a great father, the best father I could be.
What would you do if you were not afraid?
I will build another company.
What was your childhood dream?
To be an entrepreneur.
What did you learn from your biggest regret?
Wow. That I'm definitely not perfect.
Couldn't think of a better way to end.
All right, Demian. So how can people get in touch with you? Social media, website?
Yeah, on Twitter, Bellumio, Bellumio. I think it's the same for Instagram. And my company is NEORIS, NEORIS.com. And just contact me. I'm there.
Well, Demian, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating, and I love learning more about what you're doing. Also, quantum computing, where that's going. And I really appreciate you taking your time out today.
Thank you. Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you for listening to Innovation City. If you like this episode, you can find more episodes at innovationcity.co or anywhere where you watch or listen to podcasts. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams